So back to business as it is today with Chris Weeks, Executive Director, MBRA, and Paul Searle, Director of Trend Tracker. Huge thank you, as always, to our corporate partners and partners. So BASF, BMS, CAPS, Copart, Emacs, Integral, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Mercer, Nationwide Vehicle Recovery Assistance, S&G Response, and Sherwin-Williams, as well as our partners Aztec, the Green Parts Specialists in DASA, Presco UK, and the Innovation Group. So our disclaimer, so the views and opinions expressed during the following webinar are those of the individual contributors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the contributor's employer, organisation, committee, or other group or individual. Please respect any all contributions, and we encourage you to join the conversation via the interactive functions available. So we're going to run straight through the data because Paul is very shortly going to share his screen with various slides and survey results. So just a little overview of what we're seeing. So the CAPS claims analysis report came out today, and this is week ending Friday last week, the 17th of April, a 5% uptick in unique claims exchanges. And what have we got there? 7% increase in supply chain transmissions. So looking good. We've also got the Apple Mobility Trends report, and the red line represents the driving you can see there. So up 3% on that baseline. Again, so positive stuff there. We've got the ONS Opinions and Lifestyle Survey. So this one is from the 16th of April. So where are we? Earlier this week. And week 7th to the 11th of April, you can see kind of what's happening there. Travel to work and work from home. So they're beginning to divide. So people traveling to work, less people working from home, as it seems. The COVID Google-19 Community Mobility Report. So the numbers in the bottom left-hand corner as you look at the screen were from our last report, i.e. early March. And you can see the -65, -62, and -31. All those figures are going down now, which is a great thing, showing more people moving and out and about. And that's for Greater London. Likewise, Greater Manchester, you can see improvements or an increase, if you like, in that Google requests for retail and recreation, public transport, and workplaces as well. TomTom, live traffic. Now, I think this one is quite an interesting slide because we're starting to see now between the hours of, if you like, 9 and 4, traffic volumes appear to be increasing. And again, that seems to be building, not quite hit the peaks here. This is for Bristol. But what you can see is those volumes are up during those sort of 9 till 4 hours and up against 2019 volumes as well. So very interesting insights and data coming through there. Likewise, Birmingham, Wolverhampton, but you can see here, start of the week, so Monday, Tuesday, we're even exceeding those rush hour volumes in terms of traffic congestion. So in terms of our industry, that theoretically points to all good news. So we will come back and say hello to everyone. So welcome everybody. And I'll come to you first, Chris Weeks, if I may. How the heck are you? How's the world treating you?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Thanks for the invite back again. Always love coming on these. And what a really interesting topic we got today, because I think, you know, the whole industry is kind of hanging on to trying to understand whether we're going to recover again as an industry. So, you know, it's fascinating. I think the data that we're going to go through today is fantastic. Really interested to get into the debate as well. But yeah, we're doing okay. We're still coming to London every day. London traffic volumes, you know, are absolutely packed out. So it really does look like it's recovering as per your TomTom graph. Still lots of things going on with insurers, still lots of interesting contracts going around out there that are being accepted. You know, and I think that's just a sign of the time of the fact that we've, you know, the industry has been so starved of work for such a long time now. So yeah, masses going on at the moment. Really interesting times for us.
Great stuff. Thanks, Chris. And Paul, likewise, good to see yourself, my friend. You're kind of going to take the reins very shortly, but how's the world according to you right now?
Yeah, well, similar. I think at the minute there's lots of signs for optimism. I'm generally a pretty positive person anyway, so give me an excuse to be even more positive, and I generally will be. But also, you know, really, really pleased to be taking on the responsibility of insight and reports for Trend Tracker. It's something I enjoy doing. It's really interesting, and hopefully everyone will get something from this next sort of 20 minutes or so, walking through some of the results from the survey.
Absolutely, my friend. So I will hand over to you. So take it away, Paul.
I will share my screen and kill my video if you don't mind, to make sure we don't get any broadband issues. Please tell me if you can see my screen okay.
Perfect.
Fantastic. So just to put this into context, I guess, following on from Mark's good work, and I see Mark's joined us, so hi Mark, hope you're well. Where things will be changing a little bit from a Trend Tracker perspective is we'll look to be engaging with the industry on a more regular basis. So we're producing quarterly reports on topical themes, and this is of course the first one as we now 1 year on emerge from our third lockdown. And therefore we've done quite a lot of work already, which I'll come on to at the end, of which this survey forms a part of. It's been really fascinating. So I'm going to share a short summary of that today. Short because we've only got 20-25 minutes to share it, but also because there's quite a lot of content, some of which will then be in the report. So I hope that makes sense. And thanks, Chris, and thanks, Mark, for supporting this. Oh, excuse me. So just to cover off the report itself, firstly, thank you to everybody that completed it. There's over 200 shops represented in the responses, a good cross-section across the UK, a good cross-section of different sizes of businesses, some clear conclusions that actually anyone in the motor industry should be aware of, taking your point, Chris. I think some of the themes that are coming out of this have an interest for everybody. Just checking, can you still see my slides?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, let's get started then, shall we? Lockdowns taking their toll here. So this is the first question, which was asked around the last 12 months of trading and what percentage of the projected annual turnover did businesses lose. So quite a significant impact here, as you would expect. I guess just to put that into context, it was the biggest drop in GDP since records began. So it was always going to be painful as a period of time. And as you can see here, a third lost 41% or more of their turnover in the last 12 months. You can see where the majority sits in the graph. Many are still operating below normal turnover, almost another third operating below 50% of their normal position. So still some are bouncing back quicker than others, which we'll come on to in a moment with some other slides. And interestingly, during this last lockdown in Q1, some did actually close for a short period of time, most for a month or less, but obviously took the opportunity perhaps over that period just to close the doors. Okay, so government support. I think one thing to mention here is in almost all the comments coming through the report, there is significant appreciation for the government package that was put together, which actually, when you look at it, amounted to 17% of our GDP and was probably one of the most generous, actually, of all the affected nations. Which there's various graphs you can see online regarding that. So here we have a indication of only a third of the body shops answering this survey didn't increase their debt or borrowings. So great position to be in for them. Over half used the government facilities, which they're not alone in doing. So again, just to put this into context, over 2 million bounce back loan applications in the UK, lending over 46 billion. There was 23 billion in business interruption loans, and there was almost 9 million people on furlough at its peak. So, you're not alone in what's been done here to keep businesses afloat. And in fact, if you're still doing well at the moment, you're doing very well indeed. Just one small other point to note here is that a third have deferred the VAT payments. hoping, I guess, that the volumes will now bounce back and they'll be in a position to do that later in the year. There were some other comments and other data around flexi furlough and the use of flexi furlough. So again, that will be available in the report. Let's get on to present position now. So here you start to see a little bit of a polarization in the responses. And I think that some of the commentary suggests that some have benefited from insurers or their work providers generally directing work more to them from wider catchment areas to try and help them through this period, where others perhaps are suffering from that activity. So 26% receiving less than 50% of their normal volume. And on the other side of that, over half with 41% of capacity or more still available. This was as of the end of last week. So, still room for recovery, and all those promising signs that Mark went through at the start will certainly help. The other impacts in here, which I haven't gone into any detail with the time we've got available, are an impact on some of the parts supply and parts issues that have been impacting gross profit, which I'm sure Chris might have an opinion on in a moment if you want to chip in with that, Chris. And then secondly, how the continued COVID restrictions for some are limiting their capacity, with various restrictions being put into the workplace. Chris, anything you want to add on that before I move on?
Well, on the parts thing, I think, we've been a victim of both COVID and nationwide. So I think, the nationwide problem and lots of dealerships being left high and dry has caused a bit of a problem there. Credit terms have cut back clearly. Body shops are having to pay for their parts faster, and some of their discounts have been eroded as well. So it just makes it a tougher time for repairers in general. But I think the impact on the work levels is really interesting. If you kind of break down that sort of graph on the left, you've kind of got a quarter of repairers on 20 to 50% of what they had. About half of the people out there are roughly running 50 to 70%, and another quarter approximately at 70% plus. Yeah. So although we've got, I don't think we've got the Outertech stats on here, have we? But although I think the whole country is probably running at 110,000 claims per month at the moment, versus probably what would have been 140,000 in 2019. So if you look at the country as a whole, is probably running at 75% of norm. But this graph on the left kind of shows you that it's not flat. It's different for different body shops.
That's right. Not everyone's been impacted in the same way. Everyone has been impacted in some way, but it varies. Okay. Yeah.
So thanks.
That's okay. And then moving on to investments and the general financial state, really, of where we are right now. So very similar. It hasn't affected everybody in the same way. A small amount of people have decreased their investment, but the majority have kept it the same or had to increase it. Not surprising, really, because there's an awful lot happening in the industry at the moment with EV, ADAS, and various extra tooling and things that we need to start to invest to keep up. In fact, just to put that into context again, I read this morning that the AA are predicting that there'll be more EVs than diesels in the car park within the next 5 to 7 years. So on that basis, you need to start investing to be ready for that. And a lot of that comes through in the commentary, and we'll cover some of the commentary in a moment. And then on the right-hand side, potential redundancies. In some respects, it's good that only 22% are likely or very likely to make some, but still concerning that there will likely be some redundancies as we continue to move forward, as those bounce back loans need to be paid back, the VAT needs to be paid back, and so forth. There were quite a few comments in the verbatims where people had actually taken opportunities to right size during the last year, which I think has probably limited subsequent redundancies thereafter. Sorry, Chris, were you trying to step in there?
No. Sorry.
Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of investments, it's an interesting one to understand exactly what it is. So I think, a lot of it has been borrowing to keep the business afloat, using the bounce back loans, the C-bills loans, and the latest one that's followed C-bills, which is the recovery loan. They have been just absolutely brilliant lifesavers, I think, for our industry. I know a lot of body shops that have taken C-bills loans out up to sort of £200,000 odd, and they've started to use that for investing in growth because there hasn't been mass body shop exits, but there are a few that can be picked up at a reasonable rate. So some of that has been used for growth and investment, both in terms of tooling, equipment for ADAS, but also buying new body shops. So it's clearly quite a lot of the big groups out there, using this as an opportunity to grow their businesses, which is good.
Yeah, and that comes through in terms of the verbatim as well, actually, Chris, is spot on. Yeah. And this one's regarding the financial support that was given from work providers. So the graph on the left, you may recognise if you saw any of Mark's presentations back through last year, where there was some debate around what was a reasonable additional charge that could be applied during COVID. I think the average was around £75 at that point in time. The question we asked was, did your insurer customers accept those temporary charges? Well, on the whole, yes, which was great. So 76% felt they had support, but it was a bit of a mixed response, as you can see from the vast majority answering that, which we'll come on to a bit more now. And then of those that answered, almost a half were not satisfied with the level of response they got from the temporary charges. And on top of that, a third weren't satisfied with their work provider's ability to work through their debt and cash flow. So I think there was a lot of pressure to try and clear payments, clear debts, help with cash flow. And some did that very well. And I think that my sort of takeaway here would be that there's a mixed response, and that's not dissimilar to the insurer's response to their consumers, where we had some giving away or giving back some premiums, adding value to the products, doing various things to help consumers, and some not. So I think therefore this is probably quite reflective of also what was done at the time in the consumer market. Chris, you've probably got involved in all sorts of debates regarding these issues, so I'm sure you'll want to chip in on this one before I move on.
Yeah, I mean, we ended up on the ARC360 quite a lot of times, giving advice to our repairers in terms of staying open, staying closed. We also published our sort of COVID rates for repairers to try and sort of push onto the insurers. I think, this response doesn't really surprise me at all. 50% sort of dissatisfied with the support they got, I think is very, very real. The overall response that we could have got from the market, personally, I think it was very disappointing. A lot more could have been done. But all the insurers and all the accident management companies did a bit. I think the interesting thing would be to, now I wouldn't say COVID is done and finished. There's very little COVID support still out there. And now we know exactly what everybody did. Those that provided COVID support, those that provided additional cleaning, those that, waived the parts discount, and when they introduced it and when they closed it. We're now in a position to do an evaluation of who really did provide the great support throughout this period. And I think it's a really important piece of work that we do need to do, to be very clear about those that really did support our industry when it really needed it most. But, I have to say that there are definitely some heroes out there. I'm not going to go into it now, but even the likes of Vision, I think, did a tremendous job in making sure that body shops got paid on time, and speeding up payment times, which was critical at the time. And they've managed to continue to do that as well. Other insurers out there like NFU have done some amazing stuff. So I think, an evaluation of it, the overall feeling of dissatisfaction is one thing. But I really do think a great decent piece of work to understand exactly who did what and the support that was provided and valuing it is really important now. So, you know, that's something we're going to do.
Okay. I just wanted to give a bit of a snapshot of some of the comments that were being made, and this is only some. There's a lot of really good ones, and I think this sort of speaks to this polarization in the responses we were talking about, where I think you've got some that are, I wouldn't say necessarily thriving, but certainly bouncing back out of this well at the moment and investing to expand or investing in the future, and some comments there around buying up other shops. And you've got others that have had to make cutbacks or limit investment, or wish they'd sold or are trying to sell, and who are quite disappointed with the situations that they're in now, either through lack of support or lack of work or other reasons. And so I think that there's quite a lot of definitely a story of two cities almost in some of the feedback we're getting here. And that continues with the rest of the report, which we'll come on to a bit more of in a moment. Chris, and I guess it sort of reflects what you hear day to day as well.
Yeah, it's the same mixture of things. I suppose the interesting part about it is, it's always going to be difficult, and it is a difficult market. We've started doing a series of podcasts with sort of industry leaders and insurance leaders. And we're always asking the perennial questions about labour rates and, why they're not moving in line with, RPI and stuff like that. But as usual, we always see that there's a real cachet of repairers that seem to produce great performance throughout any kind of trading circumstances. There are some repairers that have done incredibly well through this period. And it's kind of what this has done really is kind of lowered the pond a bit and showed where the rocks are. So body shops have just about been able to just about make a net profit through normal trading conditions. But when it's got harder, the really high performing, the really efficient, the really well organized ones have managed to continue to drive out margins and grow through that period. And it's been really, really tough on the others. So I think this really has polarized our industry quite a lot. It's been a big learning period for everybody.
I agree. However, having been through some relatively depressing statistics looking back in the last year, it is good to see that generally people are very positive about how they feel they can come through this. So 12 months on, how confident are they that the business will withstand this financial impact? Well, as you can see there, overwhelming really, 76% in saying very or extremely confident. Now that has the first two in blue are from previous surveys, so it has dropped slightly from ones that were done during last year, which is no surprise really, because it's been an incredibly difficult year. However, I think that a combination of the government support packages that we talked about earlier, and now some of the positive signs that Mark referred to at the start, I think people can start to see how they can come out of this, and possibly even for some bounce back stronger than they were before. So I think if you look at the wider context, 1 in 2 are now vaccinated. We're not having daily briefings now about infection rates and hospitalisation rates, thank God. So that seems to start to be in a much better place. The traffic volumes are picking up, the movement's picking up, the restrictions are lifting, businesses are opening. So touch wood, we start to continue to be on this trend now, which leads me to try and predict where we think we're going to go. So this is based on the Adatex work, Chris, you referred to earlier. So you were close with your 70-odd%, because in March it was 69% versus 2019 in terms of repair volumes. And we look at this every month historically and try and predict forward based on what we're seeing, what we're hearing, speaking to people in the industry. Obviously, restrictions all started to lift at the end of March, so it's always definitely going to be higher than 69% as you move into April and May. Our prediction is it's going to be up to 85% of 2019 by May, based on everything we're seeing so far. There's lots of discussions about a potential summer peak, with people holidaying in the UK more than they would have done normally. Don't quite know how to predict that yet, but what we're doing here is every single month, as we see more data, we'll then adjust our prediction as we move through the year. I think we were only less than 4% out on the March number, so not a bad prediction. And then we'll keep doing that as we go through. And I guess just to make the point that if we do get to 85% of 2019 in May, that will be 250% more than the volume was in May last year. So, I should start to feel significantly better than the summer of last year. We update this every month and publish this to our members, so if it's of interest, you know where to find it. Chris, anything to add to that?
Yeah, like you say, there is some real positive things. I suppose the industry has survived the worst, right? So we've been through one of the worst catastrophes we could ever possibly face. We lost 80% of our volume. How an industry can survive that, I don't know. But, we haven't had the widespread failures that we expected. A lot of that, of course, is down to the government, the incredible actual government support that we've had from Rishi Sunak and this government for all of their loans and everything. It's been tremendous. But, body shops have cut out all of their waste. A lot of them cut out the waste. And you see this in corporate companies. Every 5 years, a big corporate company will just, do £1 million or £10 million worth of cost cutting. They will cut people out of their business far too far. And then they'll only build people back in when they really, really need them. We've never really done that in the body repair industry. And I think this COVID thing caused that to happen. Out of necessity, a lot of businesses cut back, or they took people out through furlough. And in some instances, they realised they didn't need everybody back that they had before. So that's created some, greater efficiency. There's also, good news insofar as you've mentioned that, the VAT repayments, loans, they are being amortised. They're not something we're having to pay out straight away. So it is softening the blow a little bit. Let's not forget, there's still something like 1,700 to 2,000 primary body shops out there. It's a £3 billion industry. We've still got 36 million cars out there. The number of cars out in circulation hasn't changed. And don't forget that's gone up something like 10 to 15% in the last 10 years. So the number of cars out there is still growing. Okay, they're not crashing quite so often. But there's a lot of, there's a lot of reasons to be positive and confident. We're even seeing big industry names that were massive, like, 10, 15 years ago, coming back into the industry. So there's a lot of cause for confidence over there. And then, you look at some of the data that Mark showed earlier. I think that TomTom data that showed the traffic peaks was really interesting because, I've been scratching my head looking at fuel sales statistics at 79, 80% of 2019 levels, and trying to understand, why we're not getting quite the same levels of claims that we were. They had been lagging way behind the fuel sales. But I think a lot of it is to do with this, the peak traffic, the peak times of traffic.
Yeah, so, the traffic patterns are different now, aren't they? And, but I think that TomTom data suggests that they're starting to get more consistent with where they were before. Not quite there yet, but certainly similar now.
Yeah, like that. I think it was sort of saying that, versus, I think we were something like peaking at 55% of whatever the maximum traffic peak could be. And back in 2020, that was running at about 40%. So that shows we were kind of already 28% up on 2020 levels in real terms, to use a politician's kind of answer in real terms. But versus 2019, we're kind of at 84%. So, there's a lot of positive sides, I think. That 21st of June, you know, when the pubs are reopened, everything's open again as per normal. I'm really praying that we get to that kind of, you know, 80-85% of 2019 levels, because we really need it.
So just to finalise, as I mentioned at the start, the report that I'm pulling together at the moment, which is becoming quite a significant piece, is trying to pull together all of the different impacts from UK businesses, people, well-being, home working, the motor insurance impact, because there's been quite a significant change in consumer behaviours and attitudes towards their insurance policies, the accident repair body shop impacts based on these survey responses, and then working with some of our partners from consumer intelligence and Autotex and others that are going to contribute to this. It could be quite a comprehensive piece, looking back at the last year, but more importantly, looking ahead at which of the things that have happened in the last year will now continue and create, you know, a longer term change, whether that's in working from home or driving patterns, or whether that's in how people want to buy their insurance or what they think of their insurance going forward, or whether that's in how some of the car park is changing. So there's lots of things I think that have been accelerated in the last year, which means we just need to take stock and have a look at how that's going to change, perhaps not only some of the ways in which we fix cars, but for those further up the value chain, how they might be looking at their categories and how they might be looking at where their spend's going to go, claim spend's going to go over the next year or two. So yeah, so we're literally pulling this together as we speak, of which the full survey responses will be a chapter. So look out for that. I think hopefully you'll find it really interesting. It's certainly been interesting to write it. So Mark, that's all from me at this stage.
Superb, my friend. Thank you very much indeed.
I'll stop my share.
Yeah, bring yourself back to life there. So fantastic. Really appreciate that, guys. And it's made my life super easy. I'll just kick back and relax then. So great stuff. So let's kind of, I suppose, let's drill down in a couple of the highlights, if you like. Are we saying the industry's kind of split into, and I know Chris used a slightly different definition, but a third, and a third, i.e. a third are kind of clambering on at the moment, just clinging on, a third are doing okay, a third are on the upward trajectory kind of thing. What's your thoughts there, Chris?
I would say that, you know, I would say, yeah, more a quarter, half a quarter. I think, you know, there's a top echelon that have got the resources and the bandwidth to have managed this whole thing very well. And they've had the capital behind them to expand and grow through this difficult period. It always happens. It's like any kind of evolution. When it gets tough, you know, you get winners and losers. You know, there's obviously a group out there that are really struggling, probably the bottom 26%, that really are short of work, and that's what's killing them at the moment. They just haven't got the work. And if you speak to any supply chain manager, any network manager, their phones are red hot every day with body shops phoning up saying, I need more work. The fascinating thing for me is how much the industry has survived overall. You know, the resilience and the innovation and the strength that's carried people through this is just astonishing. So yeah, you know, it is polarized a little bit, but I've got to say, you know, it's a tough industry, and although I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are just almost ready to throw the towel in because they've given up and they're so tired of it, but you know, they've pulled through, and yeah, I think it's tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely. And Paul, I suppose one of the key themes, and again we touched upon it here, that we've had in previous webinars has been this kind of whole alignment of business. So businesses have kind of become very conscious to a degree. Obviously, it depends where you are on the spectrum of, you know, how busy you are, but very aware of they want to work with people who align with them, i.e. have treated them fairly, whatever it might be, aligns, you know, corporate CSR kind of processes. So, you know, again, with what we've seen from the feedback there from repairers in terms of how they felt they've been treated throughout the pandemic, will we see a sort of seismic shift in that kind of approach from body shops being far more choosy when the time is right, if they can be?
I think when the time is right is probably a good way to finalise that question, Mark, because ultimately at the moment we've got excess capacity, haven't we? There's more capacity than there is demand right now, and that is killing some people, as Chris has just said. So I think there's a point of getting through the pandemic as they are at the moment, and let's face it, work from wherever you can get it, probably quite fit at the moment, based on what Chris has just said for some. But absolutely, I think that there are some work providers that have certainly enhanced their reputations and relationships, and therefore people will absolutely want to work with them or for them moving forward. But then looking further forward, looking at different alliances based on perhaps some of the OEM strategies, the emergence of EVs, some of the things that's happening in this industry over the next 5 to 10 years means actually you might need to think about who you're partnering with now to be ready for 3, 5, 7 years out, rather than necessarily what's happened in the last year. So I think probably a bit of both.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris, from your side, I mean, are you sort of hearing, is there a favourites pot at the moment that people are really interested in working with, and I'll just need to do it kind of category as well? Yeah,
I mean, there's definitely some favourites. And it was interesting what Paul said about supply and demand. If demand was low from repairers, i.e. they had, more than enough work, I think you would see the people that have looked after the repairers through this period getting preferential treatment and being the last contracts anybody wants to throw out. Unfortunately, we're not quite in that position yet. 54% of shops said they had about a third of their capacity still available, and everybody knows that. The insurers know it. It's easy to sort of, demonize the insurers, but they're operating in the market just like everyone else. I think it's highly likely there's going to be an insurance price war this year because they all made so much money last year. They have to reduce their premiums, and some of them are going to use that capital and profit that they made to expand and grow, and that will generate a price war. So it's not making it any easier. And I don't think this.
That's certainly an interesting point, Chris. I think there's been a lot written in the last couple of days on how insurance prices are dropping and continuing to drop. So that is going to put continued downward pressure on costs. But hopefully create a better consumer attitude towards the motor insurance in the first place. So there's lots of these changing dynamics, both in the sales of insurance and right through down to creation of the claims costs, that it all happening at a similar time. So it's very difficult to figure out sometimes where we're going to land. But there's not any one thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's difficult for repairers because although there are those that are performing very well and continuing to make some pretty good margins, that capacity combined with the competitive element of the insurance area, it's not making it any easier to push for improved conditions and market terms for our repairers, and they do need it. If anything, it's a worse situation because repairers are taking contracts that they barely making any money out of at all. Now you could say, well, we blame ourselves for that, but it's very easy to say when you're not a body shop. When you're a body shop that, it's take that contract to cover my costs or I die. They're going to take it, and it's a very difficult situation. But there's still some very big topics out there that, as we come out of this, we need to work on. As Bully said, IIR is an important one. It's an additional piece of activity that body shops are having to deal with, and they should get compensated for it. The investment in EV, the investment in ADAS, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of big challenges that we still need to address.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think we've also got, bundled into that is, the consumer mindset, mentality. What are we now looking for as consumers? And again, we've discussed it previous weeks. Are we more aware environmentally in terms of how, what we do, what we acquire, how we behave, and all these things? So it's it's a huge, great boiling pot of various kind of influences coming our way. Now, I want to finish on a high, because Paul, you are the first person to have come on the webinar and given us a precise number as to where the data might lie in a couple of weeks. So, Paul Sell, he's your man. But just give us a little bit on that. You were a few percent out in March, wasn't it? But we are looking pretty good as things may stand, really, in terms of a return.
Yeah, in fact, I've literally those predictions were literally done yesterday, because the original ones we'd done, I've just increased them, because I think all those trends you shared at the start, and we look at those and others on a regular basis, it seems to be climbing quicker than I think we would have anticipated. So, all the May and June numbers are slightly higher at 85% than they were before. So, every time there's new information and new data, we'll have a look at it. But that's our best estimate based on everything we're seeing and hearing and talking to plenty of people. And as each month, we'll revise it. But what the thing you might see at a stage, you might suddenly see a bit of a summer peak. I still think that's going to happen with all the UK holidaying, but it's hard to know until as we start to creep towards that, really. But certainly good to see this month the volumes looking a little bit more normal.
Great stuff. And Chris,
remember what normal is?
Yeah, well, it's a long time ago now. Final word from you, Chris. On that positive note, what would you say to kind of get the body shops out there at the moment, the repairers?
I would say, hang in there, right? Because, like I say, there's still 36 million cars out there. They're still selling more. They've had a record new car sales month last month. 21st of June, everything, returns to normal, apart from anything that would have changed. I can easily see us getting back to 130,000 repairs a month. At some point this year, I really still think we could be heading towards 90% of 2019. So if you can hang in there, there's positive things to come.
Great stuff. Lovely, wonderful stuff, gentlemen. Now I'll just give a big thanks to our corporate partners, BASF, BMS, CAPS, Copart, Emax, Integral, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Merck, and Nationwide Vehicle Recovery Assistance, S&G Response, and Sherwin-Williams. And whilst I'm reading these out, guys, people tuned in, drop a message in the chat. Let us know what you thought of today's session. And our partners, Aztec, the Green Part Specialists in DARSA, Prasco UK, and the Innovation Group. Huge thank you today. Very different session, but really enjoyed it. And so thank you very much, Paul, for bringing all the data to life and presenting it to us today. Really appreciate it. And again, if anyone wants a copy of the slides, drop us a line, either Paul or myself, and I'll pass on those inquiries. And we'll also try and get them out to you anyway, copies of the slides, etc. Chris, thank you very much once again. You are the most popular ARC360 panelist at the moment. Popular by you've attended the most. But thank you very much indeed to everyone for joining us. Really appreciate the support, and keep safe and well, everyone. And let's look on the up. Take care, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.